Today we're talking to Chris Tyrrell of the famous Tyrrell winemaking family in the Hunter Valley. Chris is a fifth generation member of the Tyrrell family, and we're very pleased to announce that they are one of our top wineries of Australia for 2022 for the Real Review. So welcome, Chris, good to have you here.
Thanks, Huon. Lovely to be here. Currently up in Brisbane judging at the Queensland Wine Show. So just finished a nice bracket of 2021 Rieslings. So all going pretty well so far.
Very good. Well, that leads into one of my questions. 2021 has been a very good vintage just about everywhere, it seems, in Australia, and including the Hunter Valley. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we had a beautifully cool growing season, which was a nice change after so many years of drought. And what we saw in our Semillons and the Chardonnays was really good flavour at low sugar levels. So when we came back from Christmas in early January, we did our first few samples, and they had amazing flavour at such low sugar levels, and just such a departure from the years of where the sugar's rising really fast and you're waiting for flavour to come in. So most of the Semillons are, I guess I'd call them a bit more classic, sort of back in that 10.5% alcohol, but wonderful, soft, delicate flavours. Similar to, I think for us, we think it's a bit similar to 2009, 2004. So just really full flavoured, but delicate and soft at the same time. And the reds, I think, are of a similar vein. The reds are really bright and beautiful primary fruit, which the Hunter does really well. That sort of softer tannin structure, just really medium weight, classic, dare I say it, Hunter River Burgundy styles.
Yep. And of course, 21 following on from the bushfire year 2020, when you didn't make much wine, if any. And so 21 has been a bountiful year as well, hopefully.
Yeah, so really good quantities, particularly of white. And we've had a wonderful follow-up in 2022, basically a mirror image of 21. So really good quantities of the products that we're missing out on from 2020, but also good volumes, which is keeps our accountant happy.
Certainly. So in the last 12 months, I think Tyrrell's has added to its vineyard holdings, hasn't it? You've bought the rest of the Stevens Hillside vineyard, haven't you?
Yeah, we've had a nearly 30-year relationship with that family, and even further back, one of my best friends growing up was Gavin Stevens, the son, and even if you go back even further, my great-great-uncle Dan Tyrrell, who was the second generation, he actually lent the Stevens family money to buy that property in the 1940s. They paid it back, which was nice, but for it to 80 years for it to come full circles, it's a nice thing, I think, these days in agriculture and families working together for a long time. So Neil is ready to retire. He's got, he's been working pretty hard his whole life, and the kids are not in the grape growing industry. So we had a nice long handover with them, a few years of leasing and discussions before that. So it's good to have that tied up.
Yeah, I think your grandfather Murray would have been pretty pleased too, because he was a real man of the earth, wasn't he? He was a man of the land. Murray.
Yeah, definitely was. Yeah.
And Tyrrell's now own quite a lot of very old vineyards in the Hunter. How many vineyards over 100 years old do you have now?
We've got 8 that we release and bottle on their own, and then a few extras. So I think we're up to about 11 now, and a couple more next year. So I'm actually not. You'd probably know this better than me, Huon, but I'm not sure there's any other winery in the world that has that many individual bottlings of vineyards, that many vineyards over 100 years old. And I think it's something that, we're probably a bit modest about, and we probably don't do a good enough job of promoting it. And I think that's probably Australia in general with our old vines. I think you'd probably agree with that. We've got these amazing resources, and I think sometimes we don't yell and shout about them as much as we should. But yeah, so we've got 5 separate Shiraz bottlings now, 2 Semillons and a Chardonnay, and then another Semillon next year and some stuff in the future.
Yeah. Well, there's a saying that old vines don't necessarily make great wine, but great wine actually makes old vines. Do you subscribe to that?
I 100% agree with that, and I think I think they would have been making amazing wines when they were young. Otherwise, particularly in those days, because they weren't trying different varieties. If it didn't work, it was a bit more economically driven. So if it didn't crop well, they'd get rid of it, all those things. And there's a vineyard that we've got at Tyrrell's now, planted in 2010, called Mothers. And like, I already know that vineyard is going to be one of our best in years to come, but I won't see that. Probably my grandkids will see that. But the fact that it's had a few goes of different varieties in that same spot and they haven't worked. And then once we got Shiraz in there, it just looks magnificent. But I think for me, with old vines, the difference that I see is the big vintage variations that you get, that bandwidth is just shrunk. They're more consistent. They handle the wet years better. They handle the drought years better. The chemistry is always good. They're just more consistent. And you get those great vintages like 2018, 14. Any vineyard you own is going to make an A-grade wine. But it's the marginal years, the shoulder years, where the great old vineyards prove their mettle.
And I guess the conclusion it's tempting to jump to is that they have a deeper root system, and that's how they can smooth out the variations in the seasons?
Yeah, I think so. So all of our vineyards, except for one, are dry growing. So the root system really has to get down. And I think having access to water in those years where there isn't a lot available is really important. And I think sometimes what I see, even just driving around, those irrigated vineyards, we have a few, but you have a lot more surface roots. And then when you get those really hot days, they can't handle it. And you see sometimes in those old vines, you get a 40-degree day, a 42-degree day, and they look fine. The next morning, they're standing up bright and tall, and then one of our vineyards next to it, which is irrigated, looks a bit sad, and the leaves are look a bit sad. So I think it's just that consistency and access to water is the key.
And Chris, how important is it to own your own vineyards? I mean, obviously, if you own your own vineyards, you can control them better and make them do what you want them to do. How important is that to you?
Yeah, I think, there's a few pieces to that puzzle, Huon. I think you can control what you want to do, but as the years go on, it's just having access to it. I think there's a real, I'm here at a wine show this week and talking to a lot of winemakers from across the country, but fruit supply for premium grapes is a real struggle at the moment. And I think particularly in the Hunter, where there's not a lot of it, you often see the wineries controlling vineyards rather than a grape grower selling to multiple different wineries. So for us, it's really important. And the growers that we do work with, they've always been handshake agreements, like the Stevens family. They're not contracts. We don't hold them to BOME levels. It's about building that relationship and sticking with them through the good years, the bad years, and looking after them, and in turn, they'll look after you.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, Chris, it's great to talk to you, and thanks for joining us online at The Real Review for our Top Wineries 2022, and congratulations on yet again being in the Top Wineries of Australia.
Thank you, Huon. Always a pleasure. Very proud to be included in the list, and look forward to seeing you soon.